Hi, and welcome back to Stone Cottage Sourdough. I'm Natalie, and I'm so glad you decided to click on this video and join me in making something a little more sweet this time around. So today we're going to be using sourdough discard, which is basically still great sourdough properties within your sourdough starter. It's just not the super active, bubbly type of the starter that is used to kind of fluff up a bread because we're making scones and we can use other leavening agents in scones like baking powder or eggs. They can be great use, and the sourdough adds the property kind of a digestee in a way. It makes it easier to digest and adds that little extra flavor to it that you wouldn't expect. So this is kind of a conglomeration of a lot of different tries of some different recipes that I've had, and I've basically settled on this, that I think the coconut extract adds a very yummy, unique flavor. The chocolate chips add that little extra sweetness. And then the sourdough, again, makes the entire end product easier for your stomach to digest. And it also just gives it a little depth of flavor, a little bit more of a tang that adds to the sweet. It's just a really great combination. So I'll tell you, when I first learned to make scones, just plain old scones, I had a friend at my work make them for my very first baby shower, and I was like astounded at this scone. And how do you make this? It's so flaky and fluffy, and it had to have been impossible to make. I was so intimidated. Um, and she was like, they're not really that complicated, I promise. And she gave me the recipe. And the first few times I made it, I was still intimidated until I really got the hang of it. But I didn't have anyone show me. I just kind of had to figure it out. Well, I'm going to show you, as I always do here. I'm going to flip the camera around here in a minute, and you're going to get to see step by step how easy scones really are. And then throw in the sourdough aspect of making them a little bit healthier for you in a way. And we're going to go sweet and sourdough today. So I'm glad you decided to join me. Um, if you want and you like the video, you like what you see, and you want to get the full recipe, just click on the link below and it'll take you straight to the little recipe booklet where you can get this recipe. Um, I'm so pumped to share this with you. I think your family is going to love it. Whoever you're making for is going to love it. Just a precursor here. I don't like a super sweet scone, just personally. Scones I don't think are meant to be like overly sweet. Uh, if you want to make a little drizzle icing for yours, that's great. I think it's better without it personally. So we do like a little coarse ground sugar topping you'll see at the end that kind of gives it a crunch on top. But everybody has their preference. Experiment with it beyond what we do here. That's what's the fun thing about baking, and it's kind of a creative endeavor. So let's do this together. I'm so excited to share this recipe with you guys. Let's get started.
All right, so here we go. We are going to start with our wet ingredients. So we're going to start with cream, heavy cream. There's no substitute for luscious, heavy cream. No whole milk, no 2% or skim. It needs to be heavy cream, I'm just saying. Then we're going to add in an egg, okay? One fresh egg. And then after that, we are going to add in what makes this sourdough, which is our sourdough discard. Remember, discard is not the bubbly part of it. You could use your a little bit of an active discard. It's just going to make a fluffier scone. But when you have the discard there ready to go, then you might as well go ahead and use that. So we're going to do the discard in there with the egg and the heavy cream. And then once you get that together, sometimes the discard is a little bit sticky. You're going to have to dig it out of the measuring cup that you're using, as you see here. So you're going to have to get all that luscious discard out. That is what is going to enhance the flavor, not only, but also give the nutritional properties of sourdough in there. Then we're going to add in a little bit of coconut. That is what makes the coconut for the flavoring in the coconut chocolate chip scones. After that, let's whisk all that up and get it incorporated. So these are kind of all of our wet ingredients. We're going to get that all mixed together so that we know when we mix the dry ingredients in, everything is going to be evenly incorporated, which makes for the best flavor in every bite. So we're going to get all that going. It's a beautiful creamy color. We're moving to our dry ingredients now. So we have our flour, our brown sugar, and I'm just also using all-purpose flour here, okay? Um, Brown sugar, All right, baking powder, that and the egg are what's going to give it our lift that we're looking for. That's why we don't need to use active starter, right? We can use discard. Um, so a little bit of salt, as you saw there. And then honestly, sometimes you can use a whisk, you can use a fork. Sometimes let's just get our hands messy and get mixing. So I'm going to mix in all the ingredients because, again, like with the wet, you want to incorporate everything really well. Then we're going to use our butter, all right? In thin little shavings, you can use a box grater. You could, like your, cheese grater. I've just cut them up into thin little pieces. And sometimes I cut them up because you want this butter. As you see here, I'm going to be using a pastry cutter to get these mixed up really well into the scone. You want your butter to be super, super cold. A lot of times I will cut the butter in those little pats and then I'll stick it in the freezer for like 10 minutes before I make the scones. So that way, your butter isn't melting on you when you do this. But this is called cutting the butter in. This is what I used to think was so intimidating about scones, but it really isn't. You're just trying to take this little utensil and get it into a lot of teeny little pieces. Sometimes I then go back in with my hands. Another reason you want your butter really cold, because this process is going to warm the butter up and you don't want it to start melting. So, anyway, we're getting all the butter incorporated. And then we're going to go back and make a little well in the middle. And that's where we're going to pour in our wet ingredients. Okay. So that makes it a little easier to incorporate them. So once your wet ingredients get poured on in there, again, you could use a utensil, but our hands are the best kitchen utensil. Don't be afraid to get messy. And this way, you also don't overwork the dough and it gets tough and chewy. So just kind of fold everything in this crumbly looking texture. You're thinking, is this going to turn into anything? That's what it's supposed to look like, I promise. Um, Once you start kind of forming it together, you'll see, oh, that's all that needs to happen. If you added too much more moisture, it would fall apart in the oven. So then, as you see, I tossed in the small chocolate chips. You could use big ones. You could use chocolate chunks. You could cut up your own chocolate bar, but I like to put in the small little chocolate chips. I think they're more manageable, especially for kids to eat around. But however you want to do it. And as you see, I'm kind of showing you here how when you pat it together, if it stays together like that, you know it's pretty well mixed, and you've got a good base for your scone ready to go. So now we're gonna put it on the cutting board and just form it into a good round disc. Basically, what you're doing here is forming it into the exact shape you want it to be for when you pull it out of the fridge the next morning. If you're letting this sit overnight, you really want it to ferment. Get it in the exact shape, exact thickness, because when it's cold dough, it is not going to be fun or easy to shape. So this way, you've got it all ready to go, and you can just slice it up when you're ready to go um, the next morning. I usually try, if I can plan ahead enough, to put mine in the oven, or I'm sorry, put mine in the fridge the night before so the discard in there has the chance to give all the wonderful fermentation properties to this scone that it can. So wrap it up all nice and cute and tight in a little tiny wrapper, stick it in your fridge. Any period of time you let it wait is better than none. But overnight, if you can, if you think about it the night before, um, and then with a good sharp knife or a bench scraper, whatever it is, I just take the disc and I cut it into whatever shape you want, really. But I usually do the little pie pieces. And sometimes, as you see there, sometimes your little scone pieces, because it's cold and everything's a little firmer, when you cut it, they might kind of break apart, but it's full of butter and goodness, so you can just kind of usually squish it back together like some Play-Doh. So it should be no problem. You can actually even bake it on the parchment that you wrapped it in if you don't want to waste. You can bake it in that circle or you can separate them out. This last step, do not leave it to the wayside. I use heavy cream. You could use milk for this. You could use an egg wash. I like heavy cream. And I just brush it on over the top over all of the pieces. Don't over soak it, of course, but I brush it so that it gives a nice glossy browned texture on top and a nice look to it. And then it also gives it the ability for what I'm going to do at the end, which is put a little coarse, uh, coarse ground sugar on it. So it gives it a way for that to stick to it before you put it in the oven. So I would say I've accidentally skipped this step before, and it's really just not the best scone look when you're done. If you want them to look impressive, if you want them to have that nice crunchy top, I would recommend this last step. It just takes a few more minutes before you put it in the oven, and it just really makes it a showstopper. So get all that sugar sprinkled on there. This is kind of like a raw turbinado sugar, is what it's called, that I like to use for baking and things like that. So there you go. Trust me, I think you're really going to want this recipe. So go to the link below and it will take you to my Substack where you will have access to the recipe and lots more recipes in the future. So thank you so much. Like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.